Tasman Series in the 1960s brought the world's best drivers and teams to Australia and New Zealand each summer. Jack Brabham, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, Chris Amon, Jackie Stewart, Jochen Rindt, Piers Courage, some of the notable drivers, and Lotus, BRM, Ferrari and Brabham, regular visitors from 1965 to 1969.
At Lakeside for the Australian Grand Prix, we reduced our commitment to 3 cars, the 2 Brabhams and the Alfa Romeo GTA for the touring car races. They certainly seem to enjoy promotions in the Sunshine State. In practice sessions, Gardner had circulated in 55.8 seconds, only 1/5 of a second slower than Hill in the BRM. Gardner was driving the Brabham Climax faster than its previous owner. There were 2 10-lap heats before the Australian Grand Prix to sort out final grid positions. Both our cars were in the first heat. The field took off with Gardner on Hill's tail and Bartlett in the 1.5 litre right behind Martin's 2.5 litre. Bartlett drove well to keep up with the 2.5 litre cars. Hill took the flag, followed by Gardner 4/10 of a second behind. Bartlett came 4th in the heat behind Martin's 2.5 litre Brabham. Not many girls racing these days. Here's Carol Palmer in a Sprite. The next event for us was a 20-lap touring car race. Gardner pilots our Alfa Romeo GTA, here followed out of the pits by Gagan's Mustang. The Mustang had pole position, but was slow off the start with Bob Jane's Lotus Cortina leading Gardner in the GTA. The Mustang soon overtook them, leaving Jane to fight it out with Gardner in 3rd spot. Alec ran our pit single-handed whilst we prepared the racing cars. The Mustang rocked away in the lead, leaving Gardner to drive a copybook race behind Jane in the Cortina. There was no hope of catching the flying Mustang, but Gardner continued to drive smoothly, waiting for Jane to make a mistake. The Mustang was circulating the 1.5-mile course in 65.1 seconds. Jane in 67 seconds, Gardner 1/10 of a second behind him. It was all over for Jane when he missed a gear change on the last lap and Gardner pounced on him to collect 2nd place in the race. Naturally, we were very pleased with the result, and so far everything was going well for us this time. Now for the big race, the Australian Grand Prix, over 66 laps of the short and tight circuit at Lakeside. Graham Hill was on pole with Jackie Stewart alongside. Gardner was on 2nd row alongside Jim Clark. Bartlett on 5th row had qualified with a 58.7 seconds lap, only 3 seconds slower than Graham Hill. Final moments for the drivers. Gardner in our Brabham. Hill in the plumb position for the start. Jackie Stewart alongside, having won the 2nd heat. Jim Clark still a force to be reckoned with, despite carburettor troubles. Further down, Kevin listens carefully to advice from Alec. Advice he is to put to good use in the race. Now for the start, and away they go. The 2 BRMs are leading neck to neck. First time round, it's Stewart, Hill, Clark and Gardner. Martin, Palmer, Gagan, Cusack and Bartlett. And the same tight pack in the 2nd lap. Down in the pits, team manager and staff are on the job. The leaders again, with Gardner sitting pretty on Clark's tail. Bartlett is driving well just behind Palmer, Gagan and Cusack, allowing them to fight it out whilst he conserves his car and energy. This is a long race and anything could and does happen. Gardner sits behind Clark. Stewart still in the lead. Bartlett in the 1.5 litre Brabham. Stewart, with Hill just behind him, was now 7 seconds ahead of Clark and the ever-present Gardner. Here Bartlett is about to be lapped by Stewart and Hill. Now the leaders are ahead of Bartlett, racing in exalted company. The V8 BRMs make a wonderful sound at Lakeside. Bartlett continues to circulate smoothly. Gardner continues the good work in the 2.5 litre. We thought we would try to follow the cars round the carousel. Here's Jim Clark. Jackie Stewart still in the lead, going round. Bartlett shows his skill on this corner. Gardner cornering smoothly and neatly. We went down to the pits to find that Stewart had just retired with his gearbox split wide open. Jackie Stewart was most upset. More retirements. Gagan and Cusack had collided in the eastern loop, leaving Bartlett now in a commanding position in the 1.5 litre class. Graham Hill now leads the race. Bartlett leads the 1.5 litre brigade. Graham Hill is now comfortably in front. Clark is beginning to slow, which is our chance. Bartlett is driving the race of his life. Gardner is putting the pressure on, here in company with Bartlett. The teamwork is beginning to show results. Oops, somebody off the track. It's McEwen and his Alpha. Spencer Martin's car has just retired, outed by a fourpenny spring in the fuel pump. Foxy Frank Gardner has now passed Jim Clark and is lying in second place. Graham Hill wins, followed by Bartlett 2 laps behind. Gardner second, Jim Clark third. Bartlett comes in, 5th overall, first in the 1.5 litre class and first Australian driver in the field. The winner arrives, followed by Clark in the Lotus. Motor Noter Mike Cable accompanies the jubilant Alec Meldon team up from the pits. Frank Gardner has driven a very well judged race to finish second. Alec congratulates Kevin Bartlett on his magnificent performance and the announcer grabs Kevin for an interview. Jim Clark and Glen Abbey exchange views on the race, whilst our 2.5 litre Brabham is swamped by an admiring crowd. The winner of the Australian Grand Prix for 1966, Graham Hill, comes in for the presentation proceedings, and here he is receiving his cup.